Hi all. Today I'm going to give an introduction and demo of Azure DevOps uh, and how to deploy, how to automate the deployments of app service or SQL using Azure DevOps. So this video contains more about uh, an live demo, how things work and how to automate. So before going to demo, have a small introduction that what is Azure DevOps. Azure DevOps is formerly known as VSTS, which is owned by Microsoft. It's a Microsoft product. It's open source. It's free up to some limitations for to do work like for small scale stuff. So Azure DevOps is mostly used for continuous integration and continuous delivery, uh, which is service provided by Microsoft. It works with any managed version controls like Git, Bitbucket, and there are more version controls that it can integrate uh, and deploy most of the major cloud service, which allows for Azure services. Azure DevOps provide pipelines to configure with automate builds and release to different environments. These pipelines can be configured in YAML as a visual model in Azure DevOps web page. So Azure DevOps is a fast way to automate build CI and deploy CD continuous delivery projects and make them available for user. So the developers won't have to hassle playing around to do a deployment when they do a bug fix or anything. It would be done with a one click or it can be automated whenever, for example, if you made a fix for a particular app, you can just go ahead and create a pull request. This CI/CD can be triggered on various conditions. So it can be a build rollup or a timely trigger or when a particular event, for example, when a pull request has been approved for version control, so it would automatically create a build and do the deployment. Now, this video is going to talk about primarily on app service deployment and database deployment. And it's more of an Azure app, an app service web app is using an multiple databases. And they both the databases are look alike same. So I'll be talking about more once I'll switch back. So so basically. This is my databases which I had created already just to save time in my Azure portal. Uh, Many of people would be wondering that why to use two databases instead of one. Well, most architecture as per their need amount of data they decide various ways, so I just pick up to show how to use entity framework with multiple databases and um, how those migration can be happen on these two databases at once, uh, and those things can be automated very swiftly, so we won't be needing any a particular guy to a particular SQL developer or the administrator to go on and do the deployments, firing scripts or whatever they have their own tool to do, but using Azure DevOps, this thing can be automated very easily and swiftly. So this is the databases, and these this is my Azure portal where I had already created my app service where I'll be deploying the code. It's an MVC application, just a small demo to show how things can be automated uh, using Azure DevOps. These are the two servers, and these two servers contain these two databases, so which I just showed you. This is pretty much it of the portal part, and this is my Azure DevOps. I had already created projects. And this is my repository where it contain all the stuffs. This is the MVC application. These are the different repositories. This one is for Cosmos DB. This one is for SQL. So this contain database. It's more of a repository layer which is connected to database using entity framework uh, to keep. Why I used entity framework? Because entity framework is it's a very powerful framework which helps to manage and track migrations whenever we do any database changes. So it just keep tracks of that, which is very useful in case if you did, for example, if you did some deployments over database and something gets fail or any error prone scene occurs, so you can you can take leverage of migration scripts to roll back whatever changes you had earlier which was working to save time. So uh, this is the version control. These are the pipelines that I had created. This one is for the continuous integration. This one is primarily for whenever a pull request has been created in order to merge. I've set few rules to to validate whatever code that I've written is authentic. It has few test cases it should go through before getting checked in, so that those things could can be deployed to the respective environments. So this is how I had created pipeline. Now there are various ways to create pipeline. Either you can go with the typical UI way, or there's also an option to uh, build using YAML. So I choose this the simple way. From here you can add tasks or I would say actions to do a particular job. For example, the first job is uh, is to get NuGet, then whatever from the source code. This is my SLN. Which is connected to my Git repository I've already configured. So it would get and restore all the NuGet packages that my solution contains, that my repo contains, and it's this pipeline is going to build everything and format it in a package at a particular location. And these are the test assembly just before getting checked in. Whatever test cases that I've wrote is um, or any fix that I made is not going to break the entire system, just to make sure that that's why this I have introduced test assembly. Now these are few copy activity that I did uh, to make use of migration, because entity framework, whenever you create a table or write a stored procedure or anything, we maintain using migration. So in order to and for creating migration we use few commands. So these are the few things that I had actions that does the job of creating a migration script, which is once the script has been generated, it would get published at a particular location so that it would go ahead for the deployment. Once the jobs are done, it would it would we can use the releases section. I had here too. There are few configuration pre. I have done pre. I have pre-configured it just to save time to show how we can achieve how we can create the pipeline release pipelines to make the deployments job easier. Uh, these are simply environments that I created um, from the pipeline. This is where after once the pipeline is been built from the repo, it would create the artifacts and all the stuff where these artifacts can be used for the deployment. So I just created these two stages. It's very simple to just go in pipeline and create new, and you can just create different stages. Uh, these are on this agent. These are the jobs that are going to run. So first is an the MVC deployment, uh, MVC app deployment. So it's going to whatever stuffs that's is been built from the pipeline. It would create a zip, and that zip file can be used for the deployments. And these two are the same. These are the migration SQL deployments jobs that I created. That when the when the code gets built and it finds that there are some migration or there was any table change in table or anything related to SQL, it would create a migration and it would do the job in these two databases. So I'll go ahead and trigger a pipeline. Now the pipeline can be triggered either by manually or or using the pull request. For example, I'll make some changes. Uh, for example, I made some changes in, for example, I changed the page name as Molly, and I just go ahead committing the changes. So for the sake of time, I had this is my master branch just to give an overall. I'm using Git repo of Azure. So this is my master code, and I can't check in. I've set a rule that no one can directly check in into master. For that, you have to follow a particular rule. You have to create a feature branch, do the changes, make sure that the code is getting built or not, and then make a pull request. Uh, So either I can create from here or um, I can go from here also, whichever way. I have made some changes here so I can create a pull request. So changing that, and I've just added a few reviewer stuff and just created. Now if you see, just to showing before deployment, there are no tables here, and as I said that I had already created entity framework uh, code. So it contained this migration where I had created few tables. So it would just get deployed automatically. That's the beauty of using entity framework. Now, if for few peoples um, who are having, for example, they are moving into, if they want to move into entity framework and use entity framework, if they already have a database which is created, and they want to migrate or into entity framework to support entity framework, they can do something like this. This is just a suggestion. It may be a dopey idea, but uh, they can first write all those models. They can import all those models of an existing database. For example, I had created all the models uh, by myself here, but they can just import all the models using database first approach. Once they have got all the models, then they can enable the migration first they have to install the entity framework NuGet package, and they have to create context, and and I know that once you create the migration, these tables which are already, because all those models that you have replicated from database first approach are already created in the database, right? I know once this migration is going to run, it would create a script like create table and all those stuff. Uh, but it would fire against the database, and it won't, because these tables are already created. Why to again recreate, right? So this is just an workaround. What you can do, you can use update database hyphen script. It would generate a script, and as these changes are already inserted, uh, you can just it entity framework creates a migration table, db underscore migration history, where it creates it tracks all the migration in there. For the very first migration, you can just copy whatever line that entity framework has generated at the end of the script and push it in dbo migration history, uh, so that it won't, once this migration has been inserted, it won't recreate the table, because entity framework would just detect that uh, this migration has already been kicked into the database, so it won't go ahead creating this table. You have to do this prior to the deployment, prior to making any pull requests, or prior to making any deployments, database deployments, because you have to go ahead in time and do this stuff. I know this is a workaround to support entity framework for the people who aren't using entity framework. So it's just a suggestion. Maybe there might be a better way, but this is the way I would have followed. Uh, so I'll make the changes. So now, for now, there is nothing in the database. There are no tables. So it would. I'm just making a pull request. Oh, so once the merge is complete, so now the build ran, and the build told that uh, there were no issues. Uh, it ran the test cases and all those stuff, and this was just for a pull request. Now there is an pipeline that is all auto triggered, the this one, sorry, this one. uh, So this pipeline, once this pipeline has been finished, when it does the job um, of doing all this stuff, you'll see there would be a new release created here. Now there's release 27. I already did few releases to test my stuff. So here you'll be seeing as 28. So now it would run. It would hardly take like two minutes to do all the jobs. As you see, as you can see, all the jobs are completed, and it did created uh, the migration. Um, and and if you go in the drop here, um, it might have created an migration. This one. If you open this, the migration would look like this. So it created all the stuff, and also it created a migration which I told that uh, it would create a migration history table, and it would start inserting migrations, whatever changes you do in database, it would keep track of everything using migration. So now it's just the job was this pipeline created a build and created the artifacts for deployment, whether for an web app, SQL or anything, can do anything. So if you go in, see, like I said, it created a release 2028. The last release was 27. Here it created 28, and it deployed uh, the web app and SQL. So if you go ahead and refresh, you'll be seeing the tables. See all the tables as came, and with a single click, right? So there were no, I didn't touch any SQL databases to insert scripts and all those stuff. I didn't run anything. All thing deployed with a single click. So that's the beauty of CI/CD. So now what I'll do, I'll insert few records just to show you. I had already created an script. Uh, Run this, copy this. I'll also insert few records in here. Maybe I can name it as PS3, maybe $300, and insert it. Now I'll go back to my web app, which got deployed, which is connected to the database. I had created a page just to show how to get how the data which I just inserted would be shown on the page. So this is the page, and like I said, I inserted few records in the product table, and the same stuff is just showing the data from the database. Now, what I'll do, I'll make some changes in the database just to show you. For example, I add one more column in the products. For example, I would add something as brand, a product brand. So I just created a column in product table, and what I'll do, I'll add a new migration called as version 2, and it you can see it created a new migration. Just adding column. These are the up and down methods which you can see in the migration, so that just in case if this migration or this database changes that you have did, it doesn't work, you can still there's an option to roll back. So I'll I'll just directly change database, change added new column in product table, save it, push it, and if I go in my pull requests, create new pull request, I'll just add reviewer ads here, create proof. So once this has been checked in, uh, you'll be seeing in the products table a new column. In in not just I made change in one table, but these thing, if you can see here, there's no column of the brand, but you will be seeing the changes reflected here and also in the other database, you know. So whatever, if you have like n number of databases, you have a number of workers configured, it would just deploy the database changes. Now there are few things. Now I'm going to explain until this builds get run and the CI/CD get triggers and the changes would get pushed. The deployment would be done. Uh, so until it complete it works, it job, I will explain that how I'm using scripts. Because these two are two virtual world, I would say physically, these are two different servers. The SQL server, Azure SQL Server, it's a contained database uh, which has their own data schema and everything. So in here there is a trick that I did. If you see, I've created two different contexts. One is pointing to the database one and database two. So now there are various ways you can play with the migration. Either you can create two migrations, same migration, same model migrations. Means model would be same, because they are pointing to the same database. So you can do something like this. I'm going to just show you, which I did just for error and try. If you can see here, there are two. I created two migrations. Both they have same structure, but for the sake to track different migrations, each and every database migrations. You can also go with this way, which each context having its own configuration, its own migrations. So you can go with this way also. Either way works. But when you go with this way, there will be a slight changes that you have to do in Azure DevOps in the process and the actions. That's a different story, but I just show you this way also works. I tried that. But for now, I'm just using whatever migration that I've created from one database can be used with other n number of databases that I created, because I'm having the same schema. So I'm not worried, because most of the changes would be done, would be most of the changes, if you can see in SQL world, it would most of it would can be a schema change, a table change, of stored procedure, stored proc, or triggers, or functions, or views, anything. So anything gets fail in single database when it's applying the changes to the first database. If it was a success, then it's going to ahead with those n number of databases. But if it fails for the first, it won't go ahead. To mine, the person who develops all this stuff, he thoroughly checks on first running locally that the scripts that or the changes that he has done to database specific are going to work or not. Then he's going to um, push the changes. But there are one more layer in here that just it's like a gatekeeper. It tracks all the stuff. If you can see here in the job, it also runs the test cases and all the stuff. Yeah, I would have also applied the database process in here, but it I just kept that. But here to mine whether you can add a process here, just like I did in my original pipeline, which does the job of the deployment. You can add one more process here for generating the scripts. If the script is 100%, it would create a script, and just create a script by running by checking against the database. So just to take precautions, and then you can go ahead uh, running a different pipeline. So now the pull request got accepted and it merged, and the CI/CD pipeline got triggered. This is the way you can try things, chunk around to do your job. Uh, there can be a different way to do this job also. There might be, but this is the way I think of to the changes can be done in this fashion. So let's just wait to get this thing completed. And once this is done, I'll show the changes that in both the databases, the changes would be applied with a single click. I didn't I'm a I'm an from a developer perspective, I don't want to play with the deployments and all those stuff. There's a dedicated team. So this Azure DevOps is a dedicated team who does the job for me. I'm just my job is to just develop and just make sure that these things are running. Whatever fix I made, whatever changes I made, and I just make a pull request, and Azure DevOps do the job of deployment of anything, whether it can be an app service or Azure SQL or the Cosmos DB or anything can play around. Microsoft Azure DevOps provides a number of they have many ways. It's a very powerful tool so to do the deployment and make our life easy. So we'll just wait to get this thing completed. As you can see, the pipeline got uh, green success, and it started the deployment. So this is right now, it's deploying the app service. Uh, these are uh, the SQL instances where it's going to, the scripts is going to get deployed. Now there is a one more feature in Azure DevOps, which Azure DevOps provide. There's a concept called as slots. So, if you are deploying if you are doing a deployment in production, so there's a feature called as swap slots. So, swap slots plays a very important role when, for example, uh, there's an ERP system or anything, for example, like Amazon or Flipkart. So, end users who are using right now, and if they don't want any interruption. For example, if I'm buying something, I don't want to end up at when once the payment, I'm in between of doing a payment, and there is a deployment is ongoing. So, there are some people usually, they show a page of maintenance that you can't do anything because there's an deployment, there's an fix ongoing for for the application. So you can't do anything. But Azure DevOps gives a way that there won't be maintenance page kind of stuff. So you have a feature of swapping slots. So if you have various environments, for example, like dev, QA, staging, and production, so you can swap your production slots with staging. So all the requests that has came to the app which is in production, and right now the production deployment is ongoing. It would cache all the requests and it would forward it to staging, with all the configuration of production. So it would still process the request in the same fashion, and once the job is done, um, all the request would be redirected to the production slots. Once the deployment job is done, we can again swap the slots from staging to production. So this is like you don't have to show the maintenance page or something like that. So which is pretty cool uh, to me. The end user don't have to just wait until the deployment gets completed or something like that. Now, as you can see, the deployment is pretty much done. SQL, it deployed. And if I go in here and refresh, you'll see the new column. And it's not just inserted in the first instance, it's also inserted in the second instance. So this is how CI/CD works when with SQL deployments. If you are having n number of databases, you can just play with this to make your life easy. So this is it. Uh, thank you all.